Hello, everyone, and welcome to Life Hacks for Working Moms, the podcast that helps you overcome the overwhelm, embrace the chaos, and cultivate a life you love. My name is Megan Strand. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to do something a little bit differently in this episode. I'm going to call it a Minisode, because instead of having a guest, what I'm going to share with you today is a technology tool that I am personally loving, and I'm going to explain to you what this tool is and why I love it. So no guest, just me. We're going to see how this goes. If you are a person like me who spends inordinate amounts of time on a daily basis scheduling calendars for yourself and others, whether it's in-person meetings or, in my case, conference calls, you are going to love this tool. And the tool is called Calendly. That is the one thing I don't like about the tool is the name, because it's impossible to say. Calendly. I'm going to put a link to the show notes in this. But essentially, what Calendly does is enable you to sync your Google Calendar to Calendly, then send people a link to choose their own time to set a meeting with you. So here's an example. In the past, potentially, I would send out multiple emails. I'm thinking on the order of between 4 and 5 emails saying, hey, let's get together, find a time to chat on the phone. And they'd say, great, yeah, absolutely, let's do that. What times work for you? Then I'd look at my calendar, then I'd come back and I'd say I could do Tuesday at 1, 2, or 4, Wednesday at 9, 10, or 5, or Thursday at noon. Then they'd come back and say, oh, none of those times work for me. Let's look at the next week. And they would maybe give me a couple of suggestions. I'd have to go back to my calendar. You get the idea. It's completely maddening. So I do this a lot all day long. Now, what I do when I send a note to people on email and I say, hey, can you meet? Would you be interested in chatting? They say yes. I say, great. Choose a time that works for you. Calendly.com/Megan Strand, which is my little Calendly link. So they get to go to Calendly, find a date that works for them, click on available opening times. It's sorted by morning and afternoon. So in the morning, it might say 6 open times, and you click on it, shows you what times are available. They type in their name. I have a custom question set up because I tend to like to call people, initiate the call, because I do a lot of calls over Skype with my headset. So I have developed a custom question that says, I'll call you. What's the best number to reach you? So all they do is type in their name and the best number to reach them, and that's it. What Calendly then does is drop an email to me saying, hey, so-and-so has set up a calendar invite, and it drops the meeting invite into my calendar, and I don't have to do anything else. I have just saved myself the headache of 4 additional emails, which, I don't know, you probably haven't heard me talk about this before, but I cannot stand my email inbox getting overflowing. Anyway, that is why I love Calendly. Okay, a couple of other reasons that I like Calendly over other scheduling tools that I've looked at, and I can't even remember the names of them because I just immediately ditched them because they did not have the functionality I wanted. So the other piece that I love about Calendly is all of my calendars are on Google, and that is a prerequisite for using Calendly. You have to have a Google Calendar. It's very easy to use. If you're not already using Google Calendar, you probably should be. In Google Calendar, I have multiple calendars. I have a calendar for myself. I have a calendar for my husband that he shares with me. I have a calendar for my kids' stuff. I have a calendar for family stuff. And then I subscribe to other calendars, like for my boss or for somebody else I work with. So I've got a ton of calendars that come through my Google Calendar. Calendly is the only web service that I've found to date that enables you to check which calendars you would like to include in your Calendly. So essentially, what it's doing on the back end is checking your schedule based on the calendars you tell it to. So for example, I don't want my husband's calendar interfering with my appointments, so that is not one I check. So what Calendly does in the back end is checks the calendars, individual calendars you tell it to check, and then it shows the available times. Now, nobody can see your schedule. Nobody knows what you're doing when you're not available. They just know when you are available. So that is the one piece that I love about Calendly that I've not found anywhere else. A couple of other things that are neat about Calendly, you can set different meeting times. So you can do a 15-minute phone call, a 30-minute phone call, a 1-hour in-person meeting. You can set your event types separately. And you can also set times of day that you want to be available for phone calls. So for me, maybe I don't want to do a phone call at 6 in the morning, even though it happens to be 9 a.m. on East Coast time. I really don't want people scheduling that for me. Maybe I'll do it anyway on my own, but I don't want people to just be able to drop in a 6 a.m. call because maybe I want to go to the gym that morning. So maybe I will start it available every single day at 9 and then ending availability for phone calls at 2. Maybe there's a day that I want to block every week for non-phone call day because I want to get stuff done at work. I know a guy, and I'm trying hard to emulate this. I know a guy who makes no appointments on Friday because he wants Friday to be the day he's able to wrap everything else up. So if you didn't want Friday to project as open on Calendly, you would just tell it, don't give me appointments on Friday, or don't give me appointments on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, whatever it is. So there's a lot of flexibility there. So for those of you who are listening, who are paranoid, and I know you're out there because I've talked to 2 of you so far, if you're paranoid about other people having control over your calendar, okay, first of all, you probably have some control issues. Second of all, Calendly really does build in a lot of features, and there are a couple of little hacks that I've found around it. So for example, if I just want to work on a project, I know like I'm behind on a project, I need to block out just like half a day to work on that project. What I will do in my Google Calendar is just block out, and I'll say, you know what, this particular Thursday, I really need to work on this report. I'm just going to do a generic calendar item. It says block from 9 to noon. That way I know when people are looking at my Calendly, they're not going to be able to block that time. So it might take a little bit of tweaking on your end, but you know what? Get over it. It's okay. It's really okay if people can schedule things on your own calendar. And you know who I am talking to here, right? Anyway, the other thing you can do is if people set an appointment with you on Calendly, when you get an email, you can always decline it. So like if you're looking at it and you're like, oh shoot, I got to pick up my kid from school and I just didn't block that in properly, you can decline the meeting. Which I know sort of seems like it defeats the purpose, but for you control freaks out there that feel like, oh, I can't give people access to my calendar, it's really going to be okay because you can actually decline the meeting. So it's okay. Just trust me on this. The other nice thing about Calendly is that you can sign up for free. You can do all of this for free. So there's no reason not to sign up for Calendly. Calendly.com. I'll put a link in the show notes. Sign up. It walks you through how to integrate your Google Calendar. It lets you figure out exactly which calendars you want it to pull from. It lets you say which calendar you want to then drop it into. So clearly you don't want to drop it into your kid's calendar. You want to drop it into your own calendar or what have you. And then it gives you all sorts of other flexibility. So there's custom times. You can send custom email messages. There's lots of stuff to play around with on the Calendly dashboard, but not too much stuff that it feels ridiculously overwhelming. Okay, so now if you love Calendly as much as I do, you might want to try Calendly 2.0. Here's what that looks like. So the other thing I have to do, I feel like all day long, is schedule calls for not only myself, but for my boss and somebody else. So what I've done there, because I have a separate Gmail account for my work, is I've set up a Calendly through my work, and it's essentially called Me and My Boss. It's not really what it's called because that's not his name, but it's called Me and My Boss, calendly.com, Me and My Boss. And that is a link that pulls from his calendars. It pulls from my calendars through my work email, and I'll tell you how I did that in a minute. And then it projects a new Calendly front end to whomever I'm trying to set up a meeting with. So there are lots of times when I have to set up a meeting, not only with myself, not only with my boss, but then somebody else. What I now do is send them a link that just says, hey, great, yeah, we'd love to chat with you. Pick a time that works for you on our Calendly. So, and just send them a link, and then voila, the meeting happens because they get to pick it on their own, which is super awesome for everyone involved. So the way that I accomplished this, again through Gmail, is very easy. All you have to do is go into Gmail. On the left-hand side of the interface, you have all of your calendars, as I explained earlier. My calendar, my kid's calendar, my husband's calendar, my family calendar, whatever it is. if you click on the little pull down next to each of those individual calendars, it brings you into some settings for that calendar. If you scroll down to the bottom, you can invite somebody to share that calendar. So all I did was invite myself on my work email to my personal calendar, because that's just sort of how my own personal calendar interfaces go. So the only reason I did this was so that I could have Calendly on my work, my and my boss's calendar, check any calendar I want it to. So now I have it checking my work calendar, which is set up through my work email, and I have it checking my personal calendar, which is set up through my personal Gmail. These are all Gmail based, by the way, if you hadn't figured that out yet. So that was the only extra step I had to do, was just invite myself at my work email to my home calendars. Now, I know this sounds kind of complicated, but really at the end of the day, it's absolutely not. It gets a little bit more complex if you're trying to share calendars with multiple people, but sit with it for a little bit and I promise you can figure it out. The other thing that I've used this for recently, I'm on the board of a nonprofit. We're hiring a new executive director. For the new executive director search position, we created a Gmail account so people could send their resumes to this Gmail account and didn't have to bother anybody else at the organization. It just went to the people who were managing the whole process, primarily me and some other board members. So now I have a Gmail account for work. Well, when it came time to scheduling phone interviews, what did I do? I set up a Calendly for that nonprofit Gmail account. So I said, hey, Mr. Candidate number 1, we'd love to have you for a phone interview. Please click this link and select a time that works for you. Now, how did I set up that Calendly? I set up that Calendly with the 2 days and the limited amounts of time that I wanted it to display. So I just set it up for a limited period of time, another feature of Calendly. You don't have to do this forever. You don't have to let people schedule meetings out 60 days in advance. You can limit it to a week in advance. You can limit it to specific days. And that's what I did in this case. I said, for this week, I only want Thursday and Friday available. I only want it from 10 to 2 on this day and from 9 to noon on this day. What happened? I had 6 candidates schedule themselves via Calendly, no issues whatsoever. I didn't have to do the email back and forth. So there you go. Anytime you need to plan a meeting, Calendly, I think, is the way to do it. So play with it. Absolutely, you need to have Gmail. Absolutely, you need to use Google Calendar. So those are the 2 prerequisites. Make sure you have that. But then once you have those, go to calendly.com. There's a giant green sign up free button on the homepage. Click that. You don't have to type in your credit card, another bonus, and get started. It's super awesome. I love it. It's saving a ton of my time, and I hope it saves you time too. Thanks so much for joining me today on this Minisode. I hope you liked it. If you do, shoot me a tweet at Megan Strand. Hit me up on the webpage, lh4wm.com, or find me on Facebook, lifehacksforworkingmoms.com. Thanks so much for joining in. Talk to you next time.